All right. Good morning, Michael Laidler. Thank you so much for taking some time. I mean, again, I say good morning because it is early, and you are taking some time out of a very seriously busy day to chat with the listeners of the Meaning Project podcast. I certainly appreciate that. Let's just get right to it. 18 years in law enforcement
Mhm.
and a passion. I mean, obviously, 18 years, you're going to develop a passion for helping, your fellow people, your fellow law enforcement officers and first responders. But you have this passion for helping them with mental wellness. Where did that come from for you?
Well, it's funny because all my life I wanted to be a police officer or be in law enforcement since the O.J. Simpson trial. I was a young kid when I saw that, and that's what kind of sparked my interest. I actually wanted to be a homicide detective in L.A.
Hmm.
Never got a chance to do that, but from that point forward, since '94, I've always looked at law enforcement as my home, as my heart, as my calling. So when I got a chance when I was 19, I actually joined the Tallahassee Police Department, and that was my first time ever as a law enforcement officer. Obviously, 19, you're not really going to have too much more wiggle room before that. So that was my first experience in that. And 19, you get hired, you're confident, you go through the academy, you start putting bad guys in jail, you start going response to calls, you're helping people out. And then I can remember back in 2008, I had the longest week of my life, and it's crazy how even today, like, I can picture, and I think all of us that's been in not just law enforcement but any industry that's stress or things that's happened to you that consider impactful, you can remember pretty much every detail. In 2008, I remember it was one of the first calls of the day. Me and another group of officers, we hear a traffic crash go out with injuries, which it really isn't uncommon because
Sure.
it's I mean, that's kind of what you do as a police officer. You go to traffic crashes, you take those investigations. But this one was a little different because when we got there, the van was flipped on its side.
Mm.
And what we quickly realized was the driver was pinned between the driver's door and the ground. We got there before all other emergency personnel, firefighters, paramedics. We were the first one there. We get out the vehicle, we look around, they look at me. I'm only 22 at the time. They say, well, it's almost like someone has to go apply pressure until the firefighters get there to get her out. And at that time, since I was the youngest and the smallest of the group, next thing I know, I found myself into the vehicle with the towel, my duty belt off, applying pressure to this woman. And I can
Wow.
remember vividly her holding a picture of her kid and just saying, me Eho, because in her mind, all she wanted to do was survive to get back to him. And it was my responsibility to convince her that she was going to get there, not knowing what was going to happen because obviously I could see the blood. I knew she was trapped under there. I didn't know how firefighters were going to get her out. So it was pretty stressful, obviously, trying to save somebody's life and be there. And I don't know how long it took, but fortunately, firefighters got there. They get her out, and we go to the hospital. Uh, the the doctor's able to save her arm. Fortunately, save her life. So that
Mhm.
call is over, but that's it. There's no after action. There's no
Right.
debrief. It's just like, all right, you're dry. Go do your report. Go hit the streets again.
Yeah. Right back
So,
to the next day of work.
yep, right back to the next day of work. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is normal. And that was it on that call. But
Yeah.
yeah, because then a lot of us that are watching, that's kind of what you go through now. You get to a major scene, and it shouldn't be that way,
Mhm.
but that's just how it was, especially in 2008. So two
Right.
days later, same thing. We get into our zones. We're first call of service. Baby not breathing.
Mm.
It's like, oof, yeah. Another start of the day, a pretty heavy call.
Yeah.
Myself and another officer. As soon as we get there, the door swings open and people are frantic. As we cross the threshold, I can remember someone handed me this 3-month-old baby.
Wow.
And from right out the gate, I could tell the baby there was no life in there.
Mm.
But I'm holding this lifeless baby. Everybody's yelling. They're looking for a result. I had no answer. I don't
Yeah.
know, once again, if this was 30 seconds, 3 minutes, but it was all a fog to me at the time because obviously all the pressure's up, all the stress is up. Firefighters come to save the day. But once they get there, they take the baby from my hands. They have the same look in their eyes that I had because they knew that baby was a goner. They take the baby off. I leave the house. I actually go to that fire department, that local one, just because it was close to us, to drop myself off. No after action, no debrief, back on the streets again.
Wow.
Get through the day.
At some point that catches up with you.
Oh, it did. It did.
Mhm.
Because what ended up happening was the next day on our day off, what do you think we did?
Fell apart.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
our only outlet was, unfortunately, the only outlet I knew about. Not saying there wasn't other outlets, but the only outlet I knew about was going to drink.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we went to this restaurant called Calico Jack's, had all you can eat crabs, all you can drink Blue Moon. Let's just say, fortunately, we were not driving.
Yeah.
So I always tell people that's the highlight of the story.
Right.
But what I didn't realize was how much of an impact it had on my life going forward. There's a
Mhm.
lot of other people that go through stressful situations, and there's never they don't know the positive means that are out there, especially being in law enforcement. I mean, I'm pretty sure Employee Assistance Program, EAP, was around back then, and this is
Mhm.
'08, so it's not that long ago. I'm sure there was other resources, people talk about peer support. I'm sure all that was around, but it wasn't pushed, at least to what I
Right.
thought was enough.
Right. Right.
So it wasn't really until 2019 that it hit me again. One of my friends, I got a call that he committed suicide, and I was like, I just talked to this guy last month, and nothing sounded wrong with him. So as I was sitting there at my desk, 10 to 15 minutes, saying, "Man, what could I have done?" That was it. It wasn't until the summer of 21 where I was like, you know what? We're not doing enough to help each other out. And at the time, even in 2021, I didn't know all the resources that were out there. I mean, once again, I'm sure there was a lot. I'm sure people in your role was like, "Hey, we're here. Let's make this better." But
Right.
from the law enforcement that was actually in the field, what I realized through three different agencies, police officer, border patrol, federal corrections, there's just was not awareness for stuff like that. I realized that a lot of people don't understand the process of who they are, why they do what they do, how to get better. And that's when the idea of self awareness, mental wellness came about. It came about looking at my own experiences and then realizing that there just needs to be more voices. And I was like, well, I'm already a professional speaker. At the time, I already had my business, but I was more focused on leadership development. And I
Sure.
was like, you know what? I need to tie what I know, what I've experienced, to law enforcement and mental wellness, because people see me, and given my experience, I know, because I know how I am, they
Mhm.
relate more to where I'm at. Not saying
Absolutely.
that, and I know there's people a lot smarter than I am, and I'm fine with that. But when it comes to relationships and being able to speak on it and be able to understand it, I knew in my role that I had to do a little bit more. So when I looked at mental wellness, that's where all of it came about. It came from me. I'm not saying I will never lie and tell people that I knew about this back in 2008
Mhm.
or 2019. It literally just hit me in the summer of 21. Now I was like, what am I doing in this realm?
Right.
And since then, what I've realized, and fast forward nearly 2 years later, mental wellness is actually pretty big in law enforcement as far as the push goes. This year, I've learned that there's a lot of organizations. I was speaking at the World Police Summit. Most of their conference was designed around officer wellness. Then
That's great to hear.
yeah, yeah. When I was getting leading up to it with the conference manager, me and him talked about it. He was like, "Hey, just that you know, in Dubai, we're really big on police wellness. We're really trying to push officer wellness out because we realize that if people aren't taking care of themselves, they cannot be a good law enforcement officer. If people aren't taking care of themselves, whatever role they're in, they're not there." So I saw that, and then I know California just passed a bill a couple of months ago where they gave the whole state of California $50 million just for mental wellness,
Wow.
literally. And that was to every agency over there. And I was like, well, this shows that in 2023 where everybody mind is going, because there's a lot of people that are now speaking on it, which is good. And that's kind of where my, I guess, shift has really been, because I see the benefit. I mean,
Mhm.
even leadership, if you don't have mental wellness in that, how can you be a great leader? Everything
Well,
revolves around this.
absolutely. And I think, thinking of the past 20 years of research and particularly into traumatic events and healing from PTSD as soldiers came back from Afghanistan. We started really paying attention to it. And I think we missed our law enforcement officers and our first responders. And hearing that, both of your stories, I think instantly like, oh yeah, that is definitely a traumatic event that, neurologically gets stuck in your brain. And here you are like, okay, back to work the next day until the next one comes up in the next, and that compounds to have a significant mental health effect. And I want to go back to that idea that you assumed resources were out there, but nobody really pushed it, or nobody said, wow, you just, almost watched somebody die in your arms. And then with the baby did have somebody die in your arms, like, is it just not a recognition, or was there maybe an avoidance of, well, if I go get help, I'm weak? I mean, why isn't there or wasn't there a push for it back then?
I think it's actually both, Dan. I mean, I
Okay.
think that you're either so like when you're in police academies, and now I have heard they're changing it, but at least back then, or at least
Hmm.
maybe even up till 2022, you're designed to be an alpha, whether you're a male or female. You
Hmm.
get to that call for service, you deal with inmates, you deal with the public. Your job is to be in charge when you get there. Your job is to take control of the scene. One of the very first things they always teach you is control the scene. So you take that same concept and you start looking at your mind and how you want people to perceive you, going to counseling, going to therapy, seeking guidance.
Hmm.
That's not usually associated with strength.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you're telling people, oh, I have a weakness. And you're
Right.
like, I don't know. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a step back from that
Right.
because I don't want to be perceived as that. So I think for the starters, that is a perception, at least back then. I'm hoping, and that's one of the things I'm trying to do with my business, with my book, with my presentation, is change that perception that no, let's not look at it as weakness. Let's look at it as completing yourself,
Right.
understanding who you are, becoming whole in everything you do.
Hmm.
Because just because you're asking somebody for help, we all ask for help. I mean,
Right.
just you're just getting someone that's actually dealing with this. So
Exactly.
yeah. So I think some of it was weakness. And then I don't want to I don't not want to say that the resources were not there,
Hmm.
because just because I didn't know or I didn't remember doesn't mean they were not there. But the big thing is how often are they reinforced? Much more today than they
Right.
were back then. But I know I could have easily went a completely worse path. I fortunately was smart enough to have somebody driving when I was drinking,
Hmm.
and or I could have kept drinking it away because, like you said, more studies are kind of starting to get more focused on law enforcement PTSD, but I think
Hmm.
we have missed that mark for decades
Long time.
because, yeah, because we just think, well, it's something local, it's not war. Well,
Hmm.
it's not a formal war. I mean, we've been shot at before. You fight people, you got conflicting personalities, people don't want you to be there. That's rough on your mind. That's not
Right.
normal for it to happen.
Right.
So
Well, we
I'm with
talk
you.
we talk about small T trauma and big T trauma, right? Being at war, having your life threatened, that's big T trauma, that, instant. But the little traumas that law enforcement officers, that first responders deal with on a daily basis, as I was saying, compound over time. And witnessing what you witness definitely has an effect. I think I'm going to take a twist here, or go back a little
Right.
bit. Let's you and I right now, right here, we're going to change the script, right? Because I think as I'm hearing you talk, I realize, wow, um, my field has a marketing problem, right? Because hearing you talk, right, going to therapy, going to counseling, you guys don't need that, because therapy and counseling suggests you have a mental illness. You have something
Right.
wrong with what's going on inside. And what I offer you is, you're not going to therapy or counseling. You're going to go talk to a coach. You're going to talk to a mentor. You're going to talk to somebody that is going to help you change what normally happens to the human mind when they experience what you and your fellow officers experience, right? That's not a weakness. That's not an illness. That is a natural human reaction we've known about since, I don't know, since we started paying attention, right? The Civil War, World War I, World War II.
Right.
We hear stories of what they would call shell shock or people just turning around and going the other way, right? Of course, those are war references, but we know during difficult times, no, we don't. The human mind does what the human mind does. That's not an illness. It's just a natural reaction to a difficult situation. So you have to go sort that out. I like talking about the hero's journey, right? If you go back through all great stories in mythology, every hero, every good hero, every hero that makes it through tough times has a mentor, right?
Yes.
They have somebody that they turn to. It's like, okay, let me help you figure this out and become better, become stronger, and do your job better. So you're not going to therapy or counseling, man. You're just going to go consult your Yoda, your Dumbledore, your, I don't know, whatever that mentor is for people uh in your world.
Yeah. But and I think it's people that specialize in the area too, which I think we need to be
Mhm.
very specific about, because sometimes you go tell the wrong people what you have going on and it just makes it worse. So you
Tell
want
me
to
about
make
that.
so you have some peers that don't understand what they're talking about, and
Mhm.
you may go tell them a negative incident and their only response is a negative outlet.
Yeah, yeah,
And you don't want that. So I want to make sure people understand that too. You
yeah,
want to find someone that's a counselor or a therapist, call them a coach, a mentor. That's perfect.
yeah.
You just want to make sure that they know what they're talking about and they're going to actually build you in that area. There's a lot of people, and I'm going to kind of slide away, that are in gangs, and their
Mm,
mentors are the wrong mentors. Let's keep
yeah,
it real. Those
yeah,
are mentors too. A gang leader is a mentor. We don't want that kind of mentor.
right.
We want the kind of mentor that's going to uplift you, that's going to build you. And that's
Yeah,
why I know for me, while I'm not a counselor or therapist, I push that group when it comes to mental wellness, as
right.
far as finding someone that has went to school, someone that has experienced it, someone that knows, like you said, little T, big T, terms
Mm,
that someone like me may not be
mhm.
familiar with, because that's what they're supposed to do. They're trying to build you up. Every hero, every athlete has coaches.
Absolutely.
Every single one. Our president has advisors. That's a coach.
Mhm.
They're trying to make sure they're making the best decisions. So, no matter what realm you're in, I think it's good to find people like yourself that can help out, that can build, and that specializes in it. Because once again, in law enforcement, we try to handle things on our own,
Mhm.
because that's kind of what you're built up to in the academy.
Mhm.
And that's not right, because that's not how our mind works. We have to have someone to speak it to. And that's kind of where, like, once again, I build on the self-awareness, like knowing who you are. Well, what do you need to get to that point? What failures have you experienced that's going to help you get to that point? To, like, you're like, well, failures are okay. A lot of people think, hey, people commit suicide, I mean, outside of having an actual mental illness, because they can't handle the failure. I mean, they don't, whatever's going on in their life, it was so rough, so impactful. They was like, oh, I can't overcome this.
Mhm.
Not realizing that that was just a stepping stone and a hurdle that was going to make them better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We
So,
talk a lot about obstacles, suffering, struggles in life. When you conquer them, they make you better, they make you stronger.
right.
And you you and the people in your realm have an opportunity to have an obstacle every day. And if you can
Every
conquer it,
day.
right, every day,
Yeah.
every time you put on your uniform and you go to work, um, there's a struggle is going to confront you, and you have an opportunity to grow past it, to become stronger, to find your mentor, your coach, your therapist, your counselor, um, and get better at what you do.
I think mental wellness is tested every day you leave your house. It's
Absolutely.
just, yeah, I mean, we can go out right now and go to the grocery store, and someone may do something or you may see
Hmm.
something. So you have to have a stronger mindset to understand that things are going to happen,
Hmm.
but don't wait for them to happen to get better. Be
Yeah.
ready for them. Be ready, because in life, things are going to hit you when you least expect it. But what are you going to do when it happens? Um,
Yeah.
that's one of the things where I, like me, for example, I usually don't talk about resiliency as much, because I look at that as more as an after effect.
Hmm.
My goal is to be proactive. So that's why I tell
Hmm.
people, well, let's be self-aware. Let's figure
Hmm.
out how we got to the point where we're at in life and how we're going to continue
Hmm.
to grow. Let's not wait to a traumatic incident to happen to say, okay,
Hmm.
now I want to go seek help. Well, go seek help ahead of time and
Yeah.
go find somebody, go find a program like yours that's going to help you build those blocks, help
Yeah.
you build different ways to handle stressful situations, because we know, you just said it, Dan, we know that it's going to happen, but Are you going to wait till it happens and say, oh, now I want to recover from it? No, that's not going to, while that is, you should do that if it happens. But if you know it's coming or something's coming, get ready for it.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. What are some of the, we know you can train for self-awareness, right? If we recognize things are going to happen in life, we're going to struggle, we're going to have, things come up. What are some of the things that you teach for self-awareness that people can take with them and prepare right now?
The number one thing that I teach is time management. One of the things we talked about, even me having an early start today, was I already planned my day out because I have
let's go ahead and share when you say time management and planning out your day. I mean, we are recording this. I don't even know if the sun's up yet. No, I'm just kidding. It is up. It is up where I am, but you were up way before that. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, you're the structure to your day, because it is, I mean, I agree with you, discipline, time management, but yours is definitely far outside mine.
So for me right now, during the weekdays, Monday through Friday, I wake up at 4:30, brush my teeth, shave, drink some water, and then I get right into prospecting for my business. So that takes about an hour or so. So that puts me at about 6. So put my clothes on, and then I usually start my full-time job at 7:30. So, you got to add drive time in there. So for that first part of the day right now, I already have it planned out. Today's a little different just because I moved things around. I knew today was coming. After that, get off, go change my clothes, go to the gym, spend time with the family, do a little bit of personal development, eat, study, get ready for bed.
So real quick, get ready for bed. What is your we talk about sleep hygiene. How many hours of sleep are you getting a night?
On average, from 6 to 7.
Okay. That's healthy at this point in life.
Yes. And I know usually what 7 to 8 or 7 to 9. I know that's ideal. Sometimes I get 5. That's just ideally I aim for 6 to 7. That's kind of where it's at. And I know I should increase it. So part of me preparing is getting my own time management. I tell people, at least that I coach and train, I'm like, hey, I'm a work in progress too. I'm not perfect, but I know what I need to do at least. That's half the battle is knowing what you need to do.
Yeah.
So my usual routine is I'm tired by the end of the day, so I'm able to go straight to sleep. I don't drink caffeine. I'm not I don't know if you guys can tell, but I've been drinking kind of water. That's usually the start of my day. I drink a lot of water. I don't drink tea. Not saying I'm opposed to any of it. I just not a caffeine person.
No caffeine in your day, huh? That's it. That's interesting.
Yes, most of the times when I'm speaking, I'll say that, and people just kind of shake their head at me. They're like, "Really?" Especially law enforcement groups when everybody has a coffee cup or a cup for tea. They look
I've
at
been
me.
sipping on mine through our entire time. So yeah, so that's obviously a conscious decision, especially in your world. What is that for you?
As far as with the caffeine, well, for me, a lot of my energy just comes from the way I'm designed. I think I have a natural level of energy. I've never gotten into coffee. I've never gotten into caffeine. I've never had an energy drink at all. I've been one of the people I've never had a Red Bull. I've never had a Bang. I've never had a Monster. I try to eat right. I try to. It's tough.
Yeah.
I try to continuously exercise, and what helps me out, I think the most, I'm pretty optimistic on a lot of things. So for me, I don't know how that ties to my mindset or energy, but I feel like I'm always looking forward to something. And I think that drives me. That pushes me to continue to do better, which is kind of weird to say. But when you're hopeful, when you have something to look forward to, that kind of propels your energy just enough to kind of get you through some of the tasks you have going on. So that's part of my day. And it's not really, I'm opposed to it, because I mean, I've had frappuccinos. I have different kind of green teas with honey. I mean, I enjoy it. I just been fortunate enough that I don't need it right now.
Right.
And I'm trying to stay away because I don't want to be hooked. I hear my friends, colleagues say, man, I haven't had caffeine today. I have a headache. And I'm like, I said, that's rough. I said,
that's withdrawal.
Yeah, withdrawal. It's withdrawal. And I'm trying not to get to that, because I try not to be reliant on any kind of medicine or any kind of item besides food. We need food. So I gotta make sure I eat that.
And water. Gotta have
water. Yeah, you gotta have water. I know you gotta rely on that, but I try to make sure anything that's artificial, I try not to get too reliant on it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I had an energy drink 14 years ago, and I'm still feeling the effects of it. So yeah, I haven't had one. Yeah. I was hanging out with some military guys, and they were pounding them like they were water, man. They would just buy a 6-pack and put them all down. I'm like, all right, I'll try one of these, and like I said, still feeling the effect of it, and it's not great. So, and I love the fact that, like, I agree with you 100%. When you have something meaningful, when you feel that purpose of what you're doing, the motivation to get up at 4:30 in the morning and go just do it, can be very energizing. So I don't want to miss. We were talking about the number one thing for self-awareness, time management. And I'm sorry, I
Yes.
took you down like 4 or 5 rabbit holes
No,
there.
no, that's good. That's what we do.
What
Yeah.
what are the time management steps you recommend to the people that listen to your speeches?
So in my book, I wrote up something called the 24-hour formula. It's the very
Mm,
last chapter, and it's literally taking your day, the day before, obviously, and going through it hour by hour. All the
mm,
things I just talked about, you input that into that formula. So if you sleep between 10 p.m. to 4:30 a.m., for example, you put that in there. What do you track? You because you want to track what you're doing. You want to plan it out because, as we say, even with goals, if they're not planned, they're probably not going to happen.
mm,
Same thing with your day. If you don't plan it, certain things will not happen. We always find like we look at the end of our day, it's like, man, how did I miss all this stuff?
mhm,
Most times, not all, it's because we didn't plan. Things
mhm,
come up all the time. Law enforcement, you may get to a call, not know what happens. But if I think, at least for me, when it comes to self awareness, planning my day allows me to kind of dictate what's going on. It allows me to incorporate personal growth, which
mhm,
I didn't really know about that till maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. Is that I have to work on that every day. There's a guy named John Maxwell, author, leadership coach,
mhm.
and he said if you work on something every day, eventually you'll become an expert in it.
Yep.
And now things that I do, I'm a lot better today than I were yesterday. Some people say I'm an expert. I hope to be considered one in some areas,
Mhm.
but I've studied leadership development every day for the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
So when I talk about it, it's because I've been working on it. It wasn't an overnight process. A lot of people say, how are you a professional speaker? Because I work on removing the uhs, the ahs, the so's. I work on transitional sentences. I work on looking at the camera. I look on body posture, but I do that daily. I didn't just wait for it to happen. And that's what a lot of people want. They want this magic pill that's just going to set them to the side. So, getting back to self awareness, time management, the way you're going to prepare, the way you're going to grow from that is planning your day out,
Mhm,
looking at everything you have to do: sleep, eating, spending time with family, work, personal development, health, and calculating that and going through those steps, understanding what you need to do. It's very, it can be kind of time consuming to a point, but once you get into a rhythm, you find yourself maybe spending 5 minutes a day just saying, okay, this
right.
is what I'm gonna do tomorrow. But you're not missing anything. And the reason why I say do all of that is because when the situation hits the fan, you've already built other areas up because it's coming. You've already gotten more physically fit.
Right.
You've already eaten right. You got more personal development, leadership stuff. I mean, you know how it is.
Mhm.
You run into leadership issues, it's better to kind of be prepared for them.
Right.
It just happens, and someone walks into your office and says, "Oh man, I'm having a problem with Joe
Yep.
Smith," and
Yep.
they're not looking for you to go read a book right there and
Exactly.
say, "Hey, well, how do I deal with conflict management?" They want you to have an answer already. They walk to your office looking for an answer.
Yeah.
So part of that is that preparation. I think that when you look at everything as a whole, even in law enforcement, preparing your mind for things that are upcoming makes it easier to handle. Not make it, it's not gonna make it to where it's not going to happen. I can't
Right.
promise that because I can't dictate the future. But
Mhm.
I know at some point in the future, something's gonna happen. But planning your day daily, going through a 24-hour formula, I think is the way to help with self-awareness. And that's why that's my number one thing that I recommend because I understand how important it is to prepare yourself for things that are coming up.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I often forget. I mean, for me, in doing what I do, my day is planned, right? Hour by hour. And then I have my regiment in the morning and after work. But so many of us, the research tells us we just kind of sleepwalk through life and we're not conscious of where our hours go, especially with those portable devices we have on us all the time that can distract us from the
Right.
meaningful things we want to do or we say we want to do and want to accomplish in life. I read an interesting point earlier on this year. researching, goals and goal setting. I believe it said something along the lines of if you practice something for 8 minutes a day for the next 365 days, you will be so much further along than you were on the first day of the year. I thought, you know what? I'm gonna try the guitar. I'm not musical whatsoever. My entire family upstairs, just wonderful piano. Pick up a piano and just start your pick up. Get to the piano, guitar, whatever. I'm like, I am not good at it. So 8 minutes a day. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I can actually do things like that, right? So whatever it is you want, whether it's, I mean, and if you put in more, reading
Correct.
on leadership, reading on self-awareness, that kind of personal development, getting some exercise, throwing some weights around, getting some cardio, just a couple minutes a day can be life-changing over the course of a year.
Correct. I agree. It's just consistently growing yourself. I think that's
Absolutely.
but planning it, doing it with intention versus just hoping it happen. One phrase I always use is you control your time, don't let it control you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where can people find out more about you and your speaking and this amazing book you've created?
So as far as where people can find me, usually kind of where we met is on
Mhm.
LinkedIn. That's
Okay.
probably the number one place, and that's just going to LinkedIn, going to the search box, and typing in Michael Laidler. I will be the person that pops up. Probably the only person that pops up, but there are a few other names that are similar. But you could tell who I am right away because you'll see this mug on there. For my book, it is on Amazon. So the book's just called Greatness Beyond the Badge: The Three Key Principles for Self-Awareness. I published that last July. That's been my primary resource on self-awareness. So that's definitely important. I have a website, Michael A. Laidler. Everything that I have going on that kind of gives you a summary. But just looking at those, I'm on Instagram, Michael Laidler as well. My YouTube channel, which it's growing. I just did my 100th video last week on it.
Awesome.
So yeah, so that's really building off. And on even on that site, I'm just pouring information. I think, Dan, that's where people like you and I come in. The goal is to give as much content and much information as we can.
Right.
And we want to see people grow. We want to see people develop. And those are the platforms that I use right now to accomplish that goal.
Outstanding. Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, when you have something meaningful and purposeful to do every day, it gets you up. And for both of us, it's helping people and sharing that message. I will be sure to include all of that information in the show notes for people looking for you, wanting to find the book. It will be in all that great writing that I do at the end of it. So again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I know you've got to get on and do the full-time job and do all the amazing work you do. So Michael, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, and I look forward to working with you again sometime.
Thank you.
Take care.